morning, everybody. Of course, I want to welcome you here in our particular session. I'm Jeremy Armstrong. With me today,
Matt Hartman,
Matt Hartman.
Service technician from Greensburg.
We're going to talk a little bit about combine optimization today. We changed a few things. Our room's probably going to be a little different than everybody else's because we like blue and gold for a little FFA action in here. Break it up a little bit from John Deere you see all the time. But anyway, to get us started, one of the big things, Matt, what about optimization do we need to know?
Basically, guys, what we're going to go over with you today in this class is some of your, basically your pre-harvest losses, a little bit of review on some things. We're going to put a spin on it, add a few new things that you guys may or may not have seen or heard about. We're going to talk about header losses, whether it's a separating, tailings issue. We're going to talk about some pre-harvest calibrations and some yield calibrations as we go through the presentation.
To couple that, let's talk about some of the initial machine settings that we need to focus on before we ever get out in the field. Folks, I don't care what kind of combine you've got, a double lot all the way up to a brand new S-Series. Right now, today and tomorrow is the best time to get the machine out of the shed, make sure it's ready for fall harvest. So
maybe not tomorrow, they're talking rain.
Hey, it might need washed, right? Mother Nature gives us that for free. So some of those initial things that we talked about optimization-wise, but those machine settings that we want to go over. Talking about rotor speed before you get started, feed accelerator speed selection, concave conditions, shoe element selection, residue management selection. You're going to hear some more about residue management. We're going to just barely touch on it today. You get next door, you're going to hear a lot more about that. Feeder house speed option, feeder house drive option. So one of the probably the biggest things that we always get every year, everybody starts corn, right? Yeah, it's awesome. They start beans. Most everybody starts beans, usually they're done a little early, but when we switch to corn, I promise you, everybody forgets where to set their combine, and this is the biggest question I receive when I am sitting in the truck or I'm with another customer. Where do I set my concaves? Matt, what's the rule of thumb?
When we go to adjust our concaves, everybody knows the old use a wrench trick, right? Is that the right wrench to use to measure how you're going to set your concave? I got some head nodding out there already. I like this. No, generally, if you take an ear of corn, shell the ear of corn off in the field, and then take a metric wrench. It's got to be a John Deere metric wrench. Internationals will not work. We do have these available for sale if you want them. We can hook you up with a brand new set of John Deere metric wrenches if you need them. Just see our parts department. But you take the box end of your metric wrench and slide it over the ear cob. That'll give you a good place to generally start. You'll have to tweak it and adjust it as we go. We all know that, but that'll be a good starting point to get started. If it's a 20 millimeter wrench, start the concave setting out at 20. If it's 30, start it out at 30. Make sense?
And a lot of the times your cob condition, we'll talk about it here as we go through, but cob condition, your moisture is going to dictate that wrench that you use. If you got a wrench bigger than if you got a cob bigger than your wrench, put the combine in the shed. Save yourself some time and trouble, I promise. Feeder house drum height. The rule of thumb has always been up, down, up, down, up, down. We've told you to do it up in some places and put it down in others. Well, we're going to change that a little bit. Leave it up. Why do we leave it up, Matt?
Does anybody know why we leave it up all the time? Why we generally just leave the drum up in the upper position? Anybody? What's that?
Let more rocks in, see some parts.
Let more rocks in? I like that theory. Generally, we leave the drum in the up position is because we're running these 30, 35 foot, 40 foot platforms right now, right? Drapers, auger platforms. That's taking a lot of material in beans. You need that drum up to allow the extra material to feed in the machine evenly, right? That's generally why we'll leave them up. If you have a situation where you get into, poor soybean quality, the yields are dropping really bad, we might have some wet spots out there this year, you may have to put that drum down if you start seeing plugging issues up at the feeder house, okay? You're getting, not enough beans are feeding through to keep that machine full, so you have to drop the drum down and let them feed in that way, okay?
I'd venture to say with the way the crops have been so far, most of the time you leave it in the up position, you're going to be just fine. Your feeder house speed option, this is one that was kind of funny yesterday in our employee training session. We got a 26 tooth and a 32 tooth. 98% of everybody leaves them on the 26 tooth. We do have a couple people that change up a little bit. Go to the 32 tooth gear if you need to speed up things a little bit, but most of the time 26 is going to be where you need to be. Let's talk a little bit about that feeder house real quick. So there's some new things, hydraulic fore and aft on our newer combines. I want to show you just exactly how that works.
Handling capacity. Also, along with the 4-strand feeder house chain, the feeder houses now have a smaller diameter front feed drum. Along with feeder house updates in 2015, we have a new feature called platform tilt. The platform tilt feature allows you to adjust your header angle as crop conditions change throughout the harvesting day. The platform tilt feature allows you to expand your harvesting window by up to 1 hour and at the same time improve header cutting performance.
Notice on that video there with the hydraulic fore and aft tilt on that feeder house, the pitch and the angle to that cutter bar. This year, and having to adjust that in the cab on these new S-Series combines that are out now, has been by far and away one of the best things that's ever happened. One of the things right out of the box that we talked about yesterday was great wheat, right, Matt?
Absolutely.
We had the opportunity to go demo some of this with the Draper and down wheat. Around the 4th of July, we got a couple bad, nasty storms laid over a bunch of wheat, right? A customer of ours was able to take a 35-foot Draper with hydraulic fore and aft tilt on it and take that so steep at an angle, he could get underneath of that down wheat and shave it off at the ground and maintain his yield potential. He was harvesting 100 bushel to the acre down wheat. That option alone is $2,500 and it'd be the best $2,500 you ever spent because when you switch to corn head, you're going to have to reload your faceplate, right, Matt? How good of a job is that in the old style?
It takes a little bit of time to do that into the older style. You have to take the bolts loose on the bottom, take the pivot bolts loose up at the top, and then turn those turnbuckles. That takes a little bit of time to do that to change the pitch of the corn head. Do we have any guys out there using the hydraulic corn head? The feeder house tilt? Couple? You guys like it pretty well? Is it a pretty nice option?
Bear with us on our AV stuff, guys, right?
Yeah.
That fore and aft is a great feature. If you're interested in newer combines, it's 16 and up, or 15 and up, I'm sorry. You're going to look at that option and you're going to absolutely love it. I promise. It's one that's going to save you a lot of time and money. It says it saves you an hour. I think it saves you way more than that. It'll save you yield, and you can go down and get some down crop. Feeder house options, obviously we're pretty familiar with these. Variable drive option, your high torque, and make sure to keep that maintained. You're going to hear some more about that in the maintenance section here in a little bit. Good thing about those, you can vary the speed on the go. Those are on your 6s and 7s. Get to your 8s and 9s, you're matched up with a 5-speed feeder house. Key thing to know here on the 5-speed or the multi-speed, it's command touch now is what its name is by trade. 2100 RPMs, this gives you your speed of your feeder house. And the key thing to note is when you put a platform on it, it automatically defaults to first gear. Even on the variable drive, it'll still default to the lower RPM because you don't need to spin that platform that fast. Speed accelerated drives. Matt, where do we always see this? It's low in corn and high in beans, right? Or it's high in beans and low in corn?
Anybody out there tell us which way it goes? High in beans and low in corn. There we go.
Hey, they got it right. If anybody caught that, I said the same thing, just said it backwards, right? So that's great. But the coolest thing is when I go to trade a combine, I'm always reminded what goes what right here, because everybody writes it down in black permanent marker right there, don't they? So that's great. Make sure you know where that's at, especially if you've got low speed feeder drive. Some of those harsher conditions, you need some more torque. You're certainly going to be able to utilize that here. Matt's going to talk to us a little bit about concaves.
We touched base on concaves earlier, guys. This is very critical to getting everything shelled off correctly, right? On the corn, getting everything out of the pods the way they're supposed to be. Who can tell me how to check their concaves? Anybody? We have this handy dandy John Deere plastic tool, right? Available for purchase if anybody needs one. Basically, you got this little open square on this box end. What you'll do is, the majority of our guys in this area are running our round bar concaves like this one right here, right? To check that concave, you take this little tool, and if it'll hook all the way on the round bars, that concave's getting wore pretty bad, right? Well, that's going to definitely affect our threshing and the separation on the systems. And you need to check all 3 concaves in the system, not just the first one, not just the last one. Generally, your first one will wear out more aggressively than the middle one, then finally the last one. So these are some things that we can look at right now before we get going and start having issues. If we've got green stem beans or green pods, this is something we need to check and something we need to look into, okay? Has anybody heard about active concave adjust? It's a new option that came out in 15. Anybody heard about this yet? Generally, it's something we'll see more with our wheat machines and things like that, but we've got a video here that'll show you kind of how the system works.
Active concave isolation hydraulically suspends the concave to improve the ability to handle uneven and challenging conditions. Active concave isolation helps to increase rotor capacity along with operator comfort to reduce concave noise.
Okay guys, real quick here. Basically what they've done is we had our adjusting rods on the old concaves here, and that's how we went and leveled the concaves up, right? Basically what Deere's done is they've eliminated those rods and put a small hydraulic cylinder in here. Now what that does is that allows that concave to close all the way up when you get started. So as the material feeds in initially, as more material comes in, it opens up. A lot of times we see a little bit of loss when we first start into the field. These machines are big pigs, they're hungry, they want to be full, right? Well, this allows that concave to close up before it gets full, and then and then automatically adjust as you go through the field. Okay?
One of the key things to think about too on it is, it's your initial setting. We talked about those initial settings. They'll close down to that point. But if you've ever had slugging issues with some green beans, or some slugging issues in wheat with an auger head, that's where this option is going to save you a lot of money.
We're going to talk a little bit about the cleaning shoe. Deere's got our options that we've always had, right? We've got our deep tooth chaffer and sieve. We've got our general purpose chaffer and sieve. Basically, a little bit longer fingers on those screens, right? Deep tooth lets more material in, and our general purpose is better for your smaller grains, right? Same thing we've always had. Has anybody heard about the Dynaflow sieve and chaffer that's coming out? Anybody? We've got a short video here that'll just touch base on the Dynaflow, and basically they've increased the capacity of it 12%, and it's got some other pretty neat options that go along with it.
In 2016, our S-Series combines feature the new Dynaflow Plus Clean Shoe. The Dynaflow Plus Clean Shoe has a 12% larger sieve area and lighter in weight due to construction with aluminum and high-strength steel. The Dynaflow Plus Clean Shoe features a redesigned shoe drive belt system with a drive belt that has twice the tensile strength of previous S-Series combines. An optional new feature for S-Series combines is active terrain adjustment. Active terrain adjustments increases your combine capacity when going up and down hills. As an added feature for 26.
Okay guys, he just mentioned active terrain adjustment. Does anybody know what that option might be? I'm sorry?
Right or left tilt?
It's kind of like that, yeah. It's kind of like our curve compensation on our combine, or on our planters, excuse me. You know how the ExactEmerge planter has curve compensation to adjust the seed drop now. Basically what they've done with this Dynaflow is the sieve and chaffer will open and close as the terrain changes, okay? So as you go uphill, it's gonna open up a little bit more. As you go downhill, it'll close down a little bit more, okay? It'll automatically do that depending on the terrain conditions that you're in. Does that make sense to everybody? It's a pretty neat option. And flat ground may not be the best benefit, but if you get into some rolling ground and things like that, it might save you a little bit of extra money there.
I think it's absolutely a south of 40 option. We joke about that, but I think you will, like Matt said, that geographical area will dictate some of that, because if you have a lot of losses out the back of the combine, could be some of it if you're in some rolling terrain. One of the good options also is that you can get onboard air now with your S-Series combines, your new ones. So if you want to come down in the evening time, stick that wand on there, and you do have wand options you can get as well, then you can blow that machine down when you're done at the end of the day.
They blame the guy that put the videos and the PowerPoint for cutting that short. I'll take full credit for it, that's my bad. Okay guys, we're going to talk just a little bit about residue management. All right, this is a really hot topic anymore. Everybody says that it's something that all our agronomists are touching base on. We got to get that material cut up, dispersed evenly, and evenly spread. You guys, we've got our manual vane tailboard. Does a really nice job on our choppers, covering 30 feet. It'll really do a good job of chopping up the residue as it comes out the back of the machine. Another option we have is our PowerCast tailboard. We've got these, we've had these for a while. Guys that use them seem like they like them really well. I mean, it does a pretty good job of dispersing that residue evenly behind, and it will cover up to the 40 feet. Our gear cases on our choppers. It's important to make sure we get these set in the right position, right? High, low, corn beans, right? Makes sense? If you don't get this T-handle in there, any idea what will happen? If you don't get it put in the right position, if you get it slipped into neutral? Are we gonna plug up our machines? Generally we would, but the S-Series combine has a real nice feature. It'll actually shut the separator down if it doesn't detect speed on the chopper, so it won't allow you to plug it up. But it is important to make sure you get that into high or low where it's supposed to be, okay?
I'm going to talk a little bit more about some losses. Matt's going to talk about some leaks here in a little bit. One of the biggest things that we see that we don't do, that we need to do more often, go outside and do your pre-harvest loss checks right out of the gate. Go walk your fields, take your agronomist with you, take your seed person with you, whomever that may be. Go out there and analyze those losses. Get an idea of how much they are, what you're looking at, and what those effects are. So you have that predetermined notion already in mind. Hook your header up, go out to the field, hit that area with the loss, and make sure that you're out there checking directly behind that head. How do we do that? Simple. Take a harvest, 30 seconds, stop, jump out, just like the guy's doing behind the head there, going ahead and checking that head in that area for loss there as well. Corn head setup and adjustments, I think this is key here. We'll talk about this real quick because we want to make sure that those are set up correctly to get the optimum usage out of your corn head. Feeder house variable speed, we talked about those. Make sure your header's set right, your back shaft speed set right so you're getting a good even flow. Deck plate spacing, calibration time, great time right now. Get the head out, set it down, check those header height sensors, do your deck plate calibration, do your feeder house calibration, especially on the fore and aft. If you've got a fore and aft, you want to do that at that time too. And the big thing about doing a fore and aft calibration with these machines, especially corn heads, if for some reason you have a corn snout up in the repair position, you can put it through the windshield if you don't do your calibrations correctly. We have heard it done in the past. So they have a safeguard on that, but make sure you do those calibrations to take care of those adjustments.
That was found out the hard way, by the way.
So one other big thing on here, make sure this is probably the most objective that we've got. You've got stock rolls. Make sure they're good enough for you, right? We can come out and give you our opinion. We can tell you to replace them. Maybe good enough for what you're wanting to do. Gathering chains, make sure they're not worn, they're in good shape before you start. Best time before you get them out, you've had to change them, is change them before the season, because oftentimes we don't stop to change them during the season. And your point adjustments. Snouts aren't cheap, are they? Make sure they're adjusted correctly. We don't want to stick them in the ground, poke them up, get them in a bin where they're not supposed to be. Platform setup. Make sure your knife drive's in line. Your hold downs. Hold downs are a big thing that probably get forgotten about the most. What's a good setting, Matt, on adjusting our hold downs? Or does anybody know what that setting is? Credit card works.
Credit card, business card, feeler gauge, 15 to 20 thousandths. Generally about 20 thousandths is where we like to be. You take the feeler gauge underneath the hold down while holding pressure against the cutter bar. We want to keep that cutter bar nice and tight to our guards. Any idea why? Can anybody tell me why? The cut, right. We want a nice, tight, clean cut. When you use a cutter bar and a set of guards, it's like a pair of scissors. Two flat edges, cut and clean, right? If that cutter bar is floating, what's going to happen? You're probably going to need a splice kit for a cutter bar, which we have available for purchase at our parts counters.
Okay. You can always pick those up. Finger timing, your auger chain tension, your position on your auger, I think. But the last thing I'm going to hit on is probably the most important. And yesterday during our employee sections, I made sure to hit this point home. When we set up drapers, we set them up to where your reel fingers will not get cut off, okay? Now, if you take your head home and adjust it, and your reel fingers get cut off, you cannot blame me or my technicians when that happens. I told the technicians the other way around yesterday, if we send the draper out and you don't adjust it and you mow down the fingers, then we can have a little discussion. But make sure those don't get chewed off. That's probably one of the biggest things we see. Make sure that it's down there close, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. That's all you're going to need. especially with these newer Draper platforms.
Can anybody tell me where to adjust those reel fingers at? Just on the head cart? Do you pull them out of the shed? How do you do it? Anybody know? Your best bet is to get in the combine, pressure up the Hydroflex all the way. Raise that cutter bar as high as it'll go. What we have from time to time is guys will get them out of the shed, pick them up at the combine, then start adjusting those reels down. The problem with that is you're only about 600 PSI of pressure. When we're running, we're 12 to 14 to 1600 PSI. That brings that cutter bar a lot closer to the reel. So if you set them at 1.5 inches right out of the shed, then you pressure up the header and take off and lower that reel down, you'll cut every one of those fingers off. So it's critical to make sure you pressure the header up before you set that.
So Matt's going to take us into, is it a leak or a loss, and then we'll wrap things up here and get some questions.
Okay guys, can anybody tell me the difference between a leak and a loss? Anybody? Anything out here in front of the header, that's a loss, right? Pre-harvest loss. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. If we've got down corn that we can't get to, beans falling out of the pods, you know, you can try and hire a technician for $100 an hour to go pick those up. Probably won't get you much. Right behind the header, also a loss. We've talked a little bit about the headers and ways we can avoid these losses. Setting your deck plates correctly, you know, watching for reel shatter, making sure our guards are good and squared, not worn out, right? Cutter bar shatter. Out the back, separator losses. We'll touch base a little bit more about these here in just a second. Where would our leaks come from? Anybody? I'm going to tell myself here in a minute. Basically, our leaks come generally from our grain tank area or our clean grain elevator. I know from personal experience, and I'll apologize to any farmers that may be in here, I have left those clean outdoors off of the engine grain tank and had a nice yellow stream coming out the back. Jeremy will admit it too, he's done it too. But make sure before we get going this season that all our clean outdoors are put in, right? It's something simple that we might miss, and you might dump a lot of corn out on the ground. It's an accident. People do it all the time.
It sounds like that grain tank's taking forever to fill up when you leave it doors on.
Okay, now we're going to touch base on 3, 4, and 5 here, our separator losses, right? Okay, if we've got corn coming out of our rotor according to our grain loss monitor, okay? Basically, we don't have our concave set correctly. You can take some of the cobs, use a wrench, try and get it dialed in that way. If we don't have our cleaning shoe set correctly, if we left it set for beans, we start shelling corn, that corn can't get through the separator, it can't get through the sieve and chaffer quick enough, so it's going to run out the back, right? Makes sense? How do we tell where that stuff's coming from? Can anybody tell me how to check that? How to check to make sure we're getting everything off the cob? There, I heard it. The dreaded power shutdown, right? Nobody likes doing a power shutdown.
They want to kill the engine when the turbo's in.
But we've got a short video here. Basically what Deere has come out and said, they've eliminated a step in the power shutdown to kind of help give you that little peace of mind. The worst thing in my mind when you do a power shutdown is reaching up and hitting that key, right? You've got a hot engine. I hate cycling the key when the engine's hot, right? Everybody, that to me is the worst step of doing a power shutdown, right? I'm falling apart up here. No, we're good. I'm good. I just got to hold a little tension on the cord. Okay, so basically when you're doing the power shutdown, we always told you to cycle the key and then turn it right back on right away, right? That was a procedure we've told in the past. Deere has eliminated that step. This video that we're going to show does a pretty good job of explaining how to do a power shutdown, and there's some other areas where you can get that information as well. We'll talk about here in just a little bit.
Run the machine at the desired crop settings and throughput levels for at least 20 seconds or until the Vision Track monitor has stabilized. For ProDrive machines, lightly depress the brake pedals. For non-ProDrive machines, fully depress the brake pedals. Quickly move the multifunction lever to the neutral position. Press the low idle button on the armrest. Allow threshing speed to drop and quickly disengage the header and separator engage switches as engine speed drops near 1200 RPM. Do not shut off the key switch. These power shutdown steps must be rapidly performed in just 3 to 4 seconds. Allow moving components to stop and let the engine cool down. Set the parking brake, shut off the engine, and remove the key. Visually inspect the threshing and separation areas. Visually inspect.
That's pretty key right there. Can anybody tell me who might have a ProDrive machine why you lightly depress the pedals? So you don't kiss the windshield, right? On a ProDrive machine, if you stomp on those pedals, it brings that transmission to a halt, right? Another reason we don't cycle the key. When you kill the key on a ProDrive transmission, it stops that transmission right now. And it's something that they touch on quite a bit here in just a little bit. But it's pretty critical if you have a ProDrive to start slowing that machine down, just ease into the brakes, okay?
For non-ProDrive machines, fully depress the brake pedals. Quickly move the multifunction lever to the neutral position. Press the low idle button on the armrest. Allow threshing speed to drop and quickly disengage the header and separator engage switches as engine speed drops near 1200 RPM. Do not shut off the key switch. These power shutdown steps must be rapidly performed in just 3 to 4 seconds. Allow moving components to stop and let the engine cool down.
That's key.
Set the parking brake, shut off the engine, and remove the key. Visually inspect the threshing and separation areas. Visually inspect.
Okay guys, basically what they're telling you to do for safety purposes, let the engine cool off, then shut off the engine before you crawl into the back of it. You definitely don't want your brother, dad, hired hand to say, well, I can run that combine, he's not in it. You might be laying in the back of it looking for something and he might spit you out the back, right? So they say make sure you shut the engine off so you don't get hurt. Okay, it is critical once you've done the power shutdown, you gotta take the side shields off, see if you've got ears of corn that haven't been completely shelled in the concave. Okay, that's gonna tell us a lot. Because if you've got ears of corn that still have corn on them back in the separator grates, is it gonna knock that corn off? It's gonna throw it right out the back. It'll hit that chopper and it's gone, right? You have no idea whether you had any loss there or not. On our cleaning shoe, if you've got a lot of trash and material and stuff, ground fines and things like that, laying in on top of the shoe augers and then on top of the sieve and chaffer, you might have your concave set too tight and it's grinding everything up. Grain tank quality looks poor. You can make those adjustments at that point. Make sense? Anybody feel any better about doing a power shutdown? That's the response I was expecting. We had a guy yesterday who said, oh, that'll get 20% of them to do it. I doubt it. Okay, guys, how much is too much? We touch base on this a little bit every year. Basically, what we're using here is 180 bushel the acre. 1% is considered acceptable loss through deer. Okay? Now, I know most everybody out here is running those 300, 350 bushel yields. We're taking my high-end average and going 180, okay? So at 180 bushel, 1.8 bushel is considered acceptable. How many kernels am I going to find in a 1x1 square at 1%? Can anybody tell me? 20s? 18?
6?
It depends, right? Depends on what kind of header you're running and the crop conditions and things like that. If you're running a 12-row header, okay, what we need to do is take all this material and dump it into a windrow. That's another thing guys hate to hear, but you don't truly know how much you're losing out the back unless you put it in that 4-foot square or 4-foot area. If you've got your chopper down and you're dispersing that material behind you, guys will walk along the standing corn and say, yep, that's about right. That's about a bushel. You really don't know because you're spreading it over how many feet, right? So we've got to drop it in that 4-foot area right behind the machine. And I'm not saying run a whole field this way. You know, get the machine out, get it full, do the power shutdown, and check and see what you've got going on. Okay?
It probably takes a good half a round to do it.
Yeah.
At least, and do it right. Remember, it's just like we talk about with all of our screens and technology. If you're not doing a windrow test, folks, garbage in is garbage out. You're not going to get an accurate sample of what you're truly losing, and you're losing dollars by not doing it. But mod conditions, some indicators that we want to look for when it's leaks or losses to determine what we're doing. You want to look at your MOG. What's your MOG? It's Doug Bacon's favorite word if you know Doug Bacon. It's a MOG.
Can anybody tell us what MOG is? Material other than grain, right?
So if it's not a bean, a wheat, or corn grain of any type, it is a MOG, I promise. And the thing is, get in there, get those side shields off like Matt talks about, determine whether that's at, if it's coming out of the shoe, the tailings, grain tank sample. Make sure you're looking at that too in your separator losses. So just the key points you want to make sure that you're looking at when you do that power shutdown. Top size, we're going to just touch on it. You know, we talked about the box and wrench. This is what you're going for. Make sure you get that wrench over that cob to test out that, especially when you're looking at it out the back and you're determining what's in there. Then condition, spongy cob, good cob. You know, you want to make sure that it's able to be shelled and shelled appropriately and correctly. When you're out there in the field, hand shell 3 or 4 years and make sure it's ready to shell. If it's tough for you to shell with your hand, I promise you it's going to be tougher to shell with the combine for sure.
When you do your windrow test, guys, this is what we want to see. We want to see that whole cob coming out the back, not half cobs, not busted, not broken. If they're coming out busted and broken, we've got the concave set a little bit too tight. You need to open it back up a little bit before you put that chopper down so we get full cob out the back.
Threshing losses, we noticed a lot of this with wheat this year. You know, and it was strictly a moisture thing. A lot of times, if you got out a little early or got out a little late, this wheat was a little tough to thresh. Noticed a lot of it still sticking to the head, not getting through the machine. I had guys grinding wheat, trying so hard to get it off, and we finally just had to back out and quit. So determine those times too, because that happens. Don't overdo it. Don't rush it. When it's ready, it's going to tell you when it's ready.
Okay, guys, we're going to touch real quick here on your side hill kits. Okay, how many guys have ran a side hill kit or are running a side hill kit? Do we have anybody in here that are running them? Generally, in your rolling areas, if you've got fields that roll, why is it a good idea to have these taller baffles and these deflectors in that cleaning shoe? Can anybody tell me? Absolutely, perfect. Overloading one side. Coming off the shoe augers and the separator. If that material, if you got a little bit of a slant, will all start to pile up, especially wet waxy corn, and it likes to run right out the back of your machine, right? If it's piling up on that wall, it's going to run out. These deflectors and these taller fins help keep that material from each shoe auger in its lanes, in its channels. That gives it a better chance of getting down inside that cleaning shoe. We've even had guys running on flat ground that really like this option, because if it does roll just a little bit, you will see some of that shifting side to side in a cleaning shoe. This will help keep it in the channels where it needs to be.
All right, so the big one. Who in here has done all these things and got them right the first time and still had problems with quality of their grain in the tank, right? We've went through these initial machine settings. We've done those windrow tests. We still have some problems. What's the first thing you do? I will guarantee you most of you call either Matt or myself and start asking questions, right? Which is perfectly fine. I don't want anybody to be misled. We want to help you. Unfortunately, sometimes there's times when we're helping someone else and can't always get to you right away. And I think this is a great time to focus on one thing, and that is all these John Deere apps that are available. And hear me out on this, because this is the John Deere App Center. It's on my iPad now. It fits for your iPhone or your Android, okay? I'm using my iPad so I can blow it up a little bit for the screen.
Has anybody used any of the John Deere mobile apps? I know I've got them loaded on my phone. Yeah, we've got some head nodding out here. They do a good job of helping you get started in the right direction as far as what you need to change. The question was, what is John Deere considering dry corn now? The answer is, Jeremy?
85 seeds per ounce at 15.5% moisture.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. If there's any other questions, feel free to hit us up anytime today, okay? Thanks a lot.